Welcome everyone to the Humor in Chaos podcast. I'm Sarah Howard Nelson. And today I just want to give a quick little brief um, overview about what I'm doing with my special guest interview with the very lovely Jessy Serrano. I have decided that I'm going to break up her interview over the course of a couple of days. So the first one is, of course, coming out Tuesday, May 6th. And the reason I did this is because Jessy has a very important story to tell, so kind of went long. So I decided to break it up into parts. And I want to suggest to people that if you have gone through a serious health challenge, particularly if it was a long time getting a diagnosis, particularly if you're a child, but not necessarily as an adult as well, or if you are a parent or a family member of someone who, of a child who has gone through, or maybe there's something going on with the child that has been a bit of a struggle, Jessy's story is of particular interest to you, in my opinion. So anyway, I hope you enjoy it. And so here it is.
Welcome, everyone, to the Humor in Chaos podcast. I am Sarah Howard Nelson. I am a resilience coach, certified life coach, and a certified art therapy practitioner. And with me today is the lovely Jessy Serrano. Hello, Jessy.
Hello, good evening.
And here's a little information about Jessy. Jessy is currently an administrative assistant with creative inclinations, and I know that very well about you. And she describes it as in the style of Anne of Green Gables, which I'm a huge fan. And she would like you to picture her name as spelled Jessy, because it's not short for anything, even though I know you get asked that a lot, don't you?
Oh, yes, often. I've been Jessica many times.
But she's not. She's just Jessy.
Mm.
While she is currently in a long-term office position with her mom, and I'd like to know how that's going, she has also worked customer service and childcare. By the way, she's great with kids. I know that. Jessy is sure that the latter two were integral in developing her people skills and, in some ways, her own confidence. Jessy had a smooth early childhood. Trouble didn't start until her preteen years. However, she was able to grow and learn from the battles that she fought while defiantly staying joyful in the face of her trouble. I love that you used the word defiantly in this description. Now, alongside her high school sweetheart turned husband, she is improving her kitchen repertoire, which I also have experience she's doing, and continuing to pursue her creative hobbies. And I love this little fun fact. Jessy is proudly the same height as Danny DeVito. Which is how tall?
About 4'10" and a half.
4'10".
I've double and triple checked Google stats, and it's, it was sort of the first milestone was passing Snooki, because at the time Jersey Shore was such a big deal, and everyone started talking about, oh yeah, Snooki's the short one, and it's like, oh, I'm just about the same height as Snooki. Oh man, I don't know. I don't know if I can do that. It's when I surpassed, and I was like, nope, it's Danny DeVito, and I'm staying here.
Now, do we want to talk about how I know you?
I'm okay with that.
Go ahead.
So we met through my high school sweetheart turned husband. You are my mother-in-law.
That's right.
Which has been fantastic, and we got to meet. I'm gonna have all my whole story here, but we met kind of like story wise at the same place that I am now. So things had really, like, we were in calm waters, and so I got to meet you at just an interesting point, I think, in both of our lives, where we were both at kind of a calm, I guess, in some way. We were both at kind of like this is the status. Things weren't as in flux as they have been and will be.
Yes, this is true. This is very true. And I just want to tell you that, and I think I already have, but the day that Jonah came home and was all aglow talking about you, Mom, you got to meet this girl in my class and blah, blah, blah. And within moments, brief moments, I went, oh, she's the one. He had never talked about a girl like that before.
Wow. Yeah, he was, I mean, for all intents and purposes, he's been my first, my only. And it wasn't so much of a, true love first sight, but it was, we were meeting and just getting to know each other, and there was comfort before I had the realization of, oh, no, this seems to be a long-term thing. It was, we got to get comfortable first and, really just be friends and get to know so much about each other, just at a nice pace.
Yeah. Yes, it was very well done. I'm very proud of him. I am.
Me
Okay.
too.
So how about you tell us your story now? Because I just keep throwing you off track already. I know I have.
It's totally good. It's totally good. I mean, we mentioned, so right now I'm working an office job, which is, fantastic and stable and such a lucky thing to have right now, the way the world is going. And there are a lot of people who are my age and maybe a little bit younger, I know, are having a hard time finding something stable. So I feel so lucky to, have my little 8 to 5, and I get to work with my mom. And, she's, as much as the company allows my direct supervisor, I'm working in her department, I'm working under her, and, I get to pester her with all my questions and, little Microsoft Teams emojis and just, we get to continue to have a great relationship, even though I'm not living with her anymore. Um, which is, a fairly recent thing. We've just moved into our own apartment. Um,
Which I haven't
so
seen yet.
and we're there's stuff in the works. We're gonna get there.
In the works.
But we're navigating that, and it's great that it wasn't it's a gradual change, really. It's a soft transition, where it's still like, oh, it's, and I didn't move across the country and now I never see her ever again. I still see her every day. And I get to ask her, hey, how do you make beef stew? I really like how you do it, and these recipes that I'm finding online are just not cutting it. I'm just like, oh, well, here you go. And 5 hours later, there's beef stew on the table.
Nice.
So
Nice.
it's, it's just a really comfy thing, and I'm so fortunate to have that. I don't know, I guess, like, kind of working backwards, I was working with kids before this. I did work with Santa, taking pictures at the mall.
Yeah. I remember
sort
you
of,
dressed as an elf.
yes. I have all the hair baubles and the earrings for it. And I would always wear my little secret, in case this ever helps anybody, is I got a body spray that smelled like peppermint. I
Nice.
really wanted to drive that candy cane smell home with everybody, and I always had one anyway because I couldn't stop eating them while I was there. They're just extra magical little candy canes.
Yes.
So, I got to have that sort of start where everything was very part-time. None of that could be full-time, but still got to be a creative position that if you had asked me as a kid, what are you going to do? What do you want to be? It was never childcare. It was never administrative in any capacity. Both my parents have worked office jobs my entire life. So I'd seen that. I'd seen all the ends of that. I was like, no, little, I was like, I'm going to be, what did I call it? I think I said an oceanologist or an oceanographer, something like that. And I'm going to be an astronaut, and I'm going to be a geologist, just whatever the interest of the month was. I'd grab my space book and be like, yes, I want to do this forever. And then it was just interesting to kind of grow and like have these realizations of, I don't think I would mind going and working with the kids, and they're hiring, and I, again, was very lucky to get to work at the same daycare that I went to when I was a kid, you know,
Oh, I
and
didn't know the same one.
yeah, the exact same site at my old elementary school, and my brother had been there, and the director at the time knew my brother because he was fresh out of there. He started like biking home around then because he got a little older. And just to walk in and be like, I know the place, you know me, let's have some fun. And I worked there through COVID. We got to do virtual school with those kids, and anybody who has had an ear to the ground, whether or not you have kids, that COVID school was incredibly difficult. Um,
Yep.
and we fought through those challenges. We gave the kids as good of a summer camp as we could. We gave them as good of a learning environment as we could. And, hopefully they're not too messed up now. I think they're okay. I've seen a couple of them, who are grown up now because I was there for 3 years, and then I've been at my current job for uh, almost 3 years. I think like 2.5 years. So, all my little ones are just they're not so little anymore.
No, and I know where you live, you do bump into them now and then. And I also remember when you quit, they didn't want you to.
Oh no, I even had seen my boss. So I left in August. I got 2 days into the new school year, and then I think it was that October we saw my old boss at a concert, and I stopped to say hi to her, and it was her and a couple directors from the other sites of the company. And she said, I will take you back tomorrow. I am ready for you to come back. I said, if I didn't have to actually go adult out in the world, I would consider coming back. And
Darn adulthood. Darn.
and she was very understanding, because I did talk to her about it. And, part of the issue was I was going to turn 26. And I was going to need insurance that she couldn't provide me. And, and it was just, it was tough, when had circumstances been different, I would have stayed there a very long time.
Yeah, I know you would have. I know you really liked it. Yeah.
Yeah. Getting to just be creative daily. Nothing was ever the same, ever.
Yeah, and you are very, very creative.
Oh,
Yes.
thank you. Thank you.
Yes. So, when you say that trouble started your preteens,
Hmm.
what are you referring? Tell us about it.
So I think maybe I didn't make an accurate of a statement as I could have, because when I was, further prepping for us to chat, I really dug back and I was like, I think I can go all the way back until 2005, of which when I would have been 7 years old.
Oh, that is younger, yeah.
And that's my guesstimate is right around then. But everything sort of came to a head. A few things sort of collided in my mid-teens, but it was all stuff that was building that we didn't know was building until we got that information, and then worked back off of that and said, oh, that's why this, that's why that. um so my my main I'm even going to say it is my main trauma, and not because I'm so deeply affected by it daily, but it's medical. And if anything kind of comes up, I'll be fine for months, and then I'll get one little twinge and I go, ooh, I hope something really bad isn't happening again. And that fear kind of takes hold for a little bit. Like a sleeper agent.
Right.
So, I it's about the trauma that I have. I think this is kind of where it is about where it sits. But in the moment, and I will talk about this as things develop, but it wasn't as scary, I don't think, as it is now afterwards. Which is sort of interesting. And I think a lot of that is just not having the information, not knowing, ignorance is bliss, and that's what I was living.
This is true.
So in, like I said, roughly 2005, I would have periodic headaches. And they weren't predictable in terms of timeline or activity that would cause them. And by then I was already wearing glasses, so we were like, oh, well, and they were reading glasses at the time, now they're not. And it was, oh, well, if you read without your glasses, you're going to get a headache. Like, okay, but I wasn't reading without my glasses today. But they were predictable in that I would wake up at night with them. And I know this because every time I had one, I had to go waddle to my parents' room and go tap on somebody and say, hey, I need some Tylenol, please. And, I was proficient enough at being a kid, I guess, that my parents would trust me. They didn't question, what I was feeling by then, at 7, 8 years old. They're like, yeah, I'm sure she knows when her head hurts and when she needs Tylenol. Right. And it was weird. They were always on one side or the other. It wasn't ever like a top or like a front. So, eventually like internet gets popular and I'm looking things up and I'm like, well, I wouldn't say it's behind my eyes. I wouldn't say it's like my temples. It was like here to the back of my neck or on the other side. And I don't have any answers about that. I don't know what that was. I don't know if it was just maybe a different nerve getting triggered each time. But that was happening. And I had this sort of, I'm stubborn. I've always been stubborn. And in this stubbornness, I'd wake up with this headache and be like, maybe it'll just go away every time. Like, maybe it'll just go away and I don't have to get out of bed. And, sometimes I'd be like smacking my head on my pillow, to try to like, sometimes I'd get like 2 seconds of relief if I did that. And my parents were like, maybe you shouldn't do that. I'm like, no, maybe I shouldn't do it, but I just want to go back to sleep. I don't want to get up. But it wasn't so regular yet. So, we kind of told the doctor like, hey, there are these headaches and I'm middle elementary, I shouldn't be having like stress headaches or something.
No, you shouldn't have.
There was nothing that should have been triggering this. It was a very easy life. Living in the suburbs, I don't go outside very often. Like, nothing should have been causing this. So, yeah. So we did mention to the doctor, and so the note was put down, in my thing, like, hey, we're gonna keep an eye on this. Around this time, House MD is a very popular show. And my parents were watching it, and so by proxy I was watching it. Right. And I remember one day I heard something about somebody having a brain tumor, and I don't know, I couldn't tell you what episode it was. I couldn't tell you any other details, but I remember hearing that term and being like, that's interesting. And there would be a couple of nights where I'd wake up with this headache and I'd be sitting there just hoping it'd go away and go, what if it's a brain tumor? At 8, 9, 10 years old, what if this is a brain tumor? Which is just such an odd thought, because I had no other context except I saw that this person was also having headaches. Okay. Like, a lot of people have headaches. Like, I knew that it wasn't, a myriad of other things I knew it couldn't be. But I was like, what's just an idle thought that was passing through my head. Yeah, so that was one of those things that just glued itself to me. It was just that term, and specifically from House, right around that era. And so, like I said, I'm like, middle, at this point, then, things were pretty status quo. And then I think it was the summer, or it would have been the first day of fifth grade, I think. Potentially fourth, but maybe fifth grade. Was the first time that I got to school and I had to look up at my best friend.
Oh.
Got up to her, you know, we hadn't seen each other, and I mean, we didn't see each other that much that summer. I remember that being the case. And I got there and I was like, oh, you grew significantly. And, you know, we laughed about it because it was like a comedy. Like, I got all the way up to her and we hugged, and then I went, whoop, wow. And, you know, occurs to me that never in my memory, and this is the case today, never in my memory have I had a growing pain. Never in my memory have I had a growth spurt. And everybody else, you know, was in their time getting a little bit taller. And, you know, I think for fifth grade specifically, was the only year in the group photo for picture day that I was not at the very front of the photo. Because, you know, they put shortest in the front and tallest in the back. And that year I beat one person who was my crush at the time, because my heels, they were a good chunky heel. They were a good 2.5, 3 inches tall. In my little memory, it's possible they weren't that tall. And my hair had just a little extra poof. So when we went back to back, I was a little bit taller. But otherwise, you know, it went from being like normal short to, okay, you're pretty short. Because everybody was growing like trees around me. So, you know, that was interesting. just to kind of have that awareness, be old enough and to notice the difference there. And it turned out in in sixth grade, about 2009, I stopped growing. That was it. And that was more on, you know, we figured that out in retrospect. But that was the time that I always went back to. I was like, I haven't grown since sixth grade. I have been the same height since sixth grade. And I'll bring that back up in a little bit. But, you know, in sixth grade, I also, because of scheduling things, I stopped going to our once a week PE class. I was getting more activity easily from my twice a week dance classes. But, you know, came the time that I put on a little bit of weight, which for me at the time, you know, I'd been like a thin to average kid, but
Yeah,
never.
I've seen the pictures when you were little. Yes, you were.
Yeah, you know,
Yeah.
I was never an extreme, except for when I was like 2, you know, but that was a stretch I had probably. And, you know, I was average, but I wasn't like a super active kid either. I was very happy reading and doodling and, you know, playing with dolls, or, you know, whatever it was at the time, but mostly reading. And, you know, so I put on this weight, and I remember reading this one story, and it was some iteration of Chicken Soup, like Chicken Soup for the Teen Soul. It was something like that. And this person was like, oh, well, I'm 12 years old. And I was like, I'm 12 years old. And they were right around my height. I don't remember exactly that. And they're like, and I'm a whopping 80 pounds. I was like, I'm 90, you know, which was such a huge number at the time. And my 2 closest friends were, I mean, rail thin. Honestly, they were both just, that was their build always. They were very thin. And I got really worried. You know, I was like, oh, I'm not doing PE. So I guess that's why I've put on weight. And I was probably an adult when I learned that you gain weight in puberty. I never knew that. I never knew, you know, so I started telling as many kids as I could reasonably tell, like, yeah, your body needs the energy to grow. So you're going to go like this, and then you're going to shoot up. You know, and I especially imparted that on my brother. I'm like, I didn't know this, and you need to know this. you know, it's what I call the taffy pulling stage. You know, you
Mm,
kind of get bloom, and then you change a little bit, and then you shoot out, and you're super long all of a sudden.
right.
And I think I started this because I hit some of the milestones, and then everything stopped, and there were no other milestones being hit. But like I said, I didn't know, so I was like, man, it's all my fault. I'm not doing PE, and now I've gained all this weight, and I was looking at my pictures, and I was seeing chubby cheeks, and I just didn't think I was wearing it well, and I started getting really, I don't know, a little extra concerned about my food, because that was the thing I could do, because I wasn't gonna like go outside and run and play. Like, that still wasn't an option. That wasn't happening. I had boundaries. Um, so I started saying, well, I need to get the low fat of this. I need to get the 100-calorie snack pack of that. No, don't put the butter on my sandwich. No, don't do this. No, don't do that. And there was some other incident where I was already being a little extra careful about my food from a couple years back. So it all kind of, was all coming together. And um yeah, I don't know. I mean, that was sixth grade was just kind of a lot.
That
Um
is that is a lot, especially at that age. That's a lot. It's a lot
it
to put
yeah.
on your shoulders.
We also moved in sixth grade, which is just to add on to the plate. Like, nothing came of it, but we moved. But actually, before we moved, I was also riding my bike to school, and it was, I mean, maybe a 7-minute bike ride, and that's being generous. It felt really long, and because you're a kid and everything just feels like it's so far away.
Yeah.
Like, if I got to the end of my street, I could not see my school, so that meant it was far. But even that was probably about the same amount of activity as I would have gotten from a PE class. But whatever. So this was all just, I'm really letting it simmer.
Your process.
Um,
Yeah.
mhm. And then so then we graduate from elementary school, because out here middle school is 7th and 8th grade.
Yes.
So then we're going into middle school, and um now PE is every day, which was misery incarnate. Um, but I also started dropping the weight. And so I was like, okay, that makes sense. They have us running minimum quarter mile every day.
Mhm.
So that has to mean something. And then I heard, oh, well, you got to have protein after you work out so that your body will burn the fat and not the muscle. I said, you got it. And I would take a little protein bar to school every day, and I would eat at least half of it. And I was like, this is my regimen, this is my PE, and I was still doing dance, um and it was in 7th, 8th grade where I really started articulating hey, I haven't grown in a year. Hey, I haven't grown since 6th grade. I've been the same height since 6th grade. Now it's been 2 years. They would put us up against the wall, and they would measure us, and they'd be like, "Oh, you're 4'9". I'm like, I know for a fact these shoes give me an extra inch of height. I've tested. I'm 4'8", and I have been. This is my 3rd year.
Are you still getting headaches at this time?
Yes, I definitely am. They got a little bit less predictable, because, well, I don't know why they got less predictable, but I had to miss a run for PE one day. I went up to my teacher and I said, my head hurts so bad. That probably would have even classified as a migraine.
Mhm.
Um, because it was, I mean, she said, okay, you're not going to do the run. You're going to mark the times for me. She tried to go drink some water, and I was like, I promise you it won't work. I know my headaches. She didn't know me well, but I knew me.
Mhm.
And afterwards, I mean, like, don't tell the administrators, but I was, at that point, taking Advil with me to school, because I didn't want to have to go up to the office if something happened. So
Right.
I had a little discreet box. I would put cotton ball in it,
Mhm.
and then take that with me. And like, I wasn't sharing it with anybody. I was being super discreet. It was for me to make sure that I could continue learning during the day. Um, you know, so after PE, I was able to get my meds and I was okay. But like that one was really bad. I looked down at the paper and the blinding light between the paper and the sun. And it just, I remember it like seared into me. And I was like, oh, that's not very comfortable. I don't know yet that I could say they were more frequent. They still felt relatively infrequent, maybe once a month. I was having a significant headache. You know, and by now we're talking to the doctors like, hey, this is still happening. And so they've run a couple tests trying to identify anything going on with me. But I do remember telling either my parents or a doctor, like, I know I haven't grown. And it kind of got brushed off at the time. A little bit. And I was like, I guess, but I know it. Like, I've been keeping track, you know, maybe you haven't, but I'm a kid and it's as important to me as my age. My height is, you know, it's my identification. It's what we have to go off of. So, around, let's see, I have to I have certain markers and I have to count through the years. So around 8th grade, and I don't have the exact timeline on this, and this is just to add to my plate, my parents split up. Which was, you know, its own bag of tricks, you know, and a lot of things change, and you know, we moved again and again and again. You know, and we were, you know, going back and forth between houses, my brother and I were, and you know, I mean, there wasn't much to say about that, because my parents, you know, as much as they were going to disagree about anything else, they were always in agreement that our well-being was first. You know, so they were going to show up to, you know, a taekwondo test. They were going to show up to a dance recital. They were going to be there because it was for us. You know, and we weren't going to be in the middle of anything. Like, I was old enough to be told this and appreciate that I was being told this and that it was in fact being true. Yeah. So also around this time, I go to see my doctor, and I think it was 8th grade. Maybe later 8th grade. In the memory, it's that I hadn't seen my pediatrician in a little while, which might be true. You know, I think we went, got my flu shot, and got out of there. So we went in there. She's like, okay, you know, it's been a little while. You are still the same height. I'm like, I know. And then she's like, okay, touch your toes. Oh, you have scoliosis. Oh, that's nice. Thank you. And it wasn't extreme, you know, it was, I'm sure to the professional eye, it was visible in some capacity, but you know, I wasn't walking around super crooked. So she said, okay, since headaches are still happening and and by then I definitely had dropped a bunch of weight. I would have been closer to 80. Eventually at my lowest, I was 74 pounds.
Okay.
Which was a pretty big difference.
Yeah.
On a smallish frame.
Yeah. When you're that young. Yeah. That's a big difference.
Yes. So, you know, there was that, and you haven't grown and you have scoliosis. So I'm going to send you to, this is where, so he wasn't as important to the story. I did go see a spine doctor. I liked him better because he didn't take blood from me.
I don't like giving blood either. I don't like it when I give blood either. I get done all the dang time.
I was like, you're cool. There are no needles involved in this. Every time I go, massive trepidation. It's like, are you sure we're not gonna change your mind this time? And he's like, no. Here, just do this. Thanks. You're great. And he, by 9th grade, put me in a back brace. Because they said, well, as you grow, you know, we can't fix your scoliosis, but as you grow, it'll get worse. And we don't want to have to, for it to progress to a point of operation. So, we're going to get you in this back brace and hold it, hold your back where it needs to be while you grow to, you know, correct for the future.
Mm.
And I was like, but I haven't grown. I'm not growing. I mean, we didn't have anything definitive, but I was like, I'm not growing. Why do we need to do this? And I know it was ninth grade. Just, because at that point, I went into high school and, then I became the little tiny freshman with this big plastic cage around her abdomen that did in fact force my shoulder up a little bit. And my boundary for that was, as they continued to happen, because at first it was like, oh, just at night when you're sleeping, and then I started to have to wear it during the day. I said, I am not wearing this thing for Thanksgiving because I would like to eat a real dinner. Because this thing was, you had to put it on and then tighten it in, and it was fairly compressing. We kind of jokingly called it my corset. Eventually I was able, so they had marked on a little band, okay, tighten it to this point of the band and then velcro it to yourself. There was no way to make it pretty. I put stickers all over that thing. It was hideous. And the stickers were not then what they are now, so it were like scrapbooking stickers. But I think I corrected my scoliosis by a degree or two because I started over tightening my brace.
Okay.
It didn't serve me anything. I just did it, and it happened. And eventually they were like, hey, you're not growing, you don't have to wear this. I said, cool, that's what I said. But thank you for informing me. But at the same time I went to start seeing him, more importantly, I went to start seeing my pediatric endocrinologist, who, I don't know, by then was probably in his late 50s, early 60s. He had a wry sense of humor, very just dry, and we both had a good appreciation for the sarcasm. We could volley it back and forth pretty effectively.
Also, he prepared you for your mother-in-law.
Oh yes. Oh yes. Oh yeah, he was great. I'd sit up on there and he'd ask me some little, jabby question, and I'd give him a jabby answer, and he'd just kind of stop, and and it felt good. Especially because I was convinced that he was a vampire because he took so many blood tests. So, I liked his personality better, but then going there meant I was going to go to the lab afterwards, and I really didn't enjoy that. The only thing that would have made it worse was if he was the one doing the blood test himself. So, he starts just absolutely running the gamut of all the tests that he can, trying to be like, what is this? And my headaches at this point are becoming a little bit more frequent. And I mean, otherwise still just kind of the same. And what I think was interesting to at least my pediatrician, because I remember her asking, well, do you wake up with them in the morning? I would say, no, they're in the afternoon or at night. She would say, okay, are you getting physically sick when you have a headache? And I would say, no, I've never been sick. Okay. Does it go away when you take pain meds? Yes, my headache does go away, in the prescribed amount of time. Give it an hour, give me a dose of Tylenol and eventually Advil, and I'd be fine. She was like, it's a good sign. I like getting a So, then other, extra tests and extra little leveling things had to be checked. At some point during this, my endocrinologist said, you went and dropped a bunch of weight. It's very possible that in doing so, you sort of stopped what puberty was doing because your body needs that energy. I said, oh, really? What an odd thing. And I'm not convinced. I have a different theory now that I don't know that we can confirm, but that's what he said at the time, knowing what he knew, which wasn't as much when he made that statement. I said, okay. Oh, and also just again, adding to my plate, in all these labs, we also found out that I don't have good veins for taking blood draws. So I'm a horrible stick. I have to warn every single phlebotomist that I've ever seen ever. Hey, I'm a tough stick. And that's part of how I advocate for myself now. Just like, hey, I'm
Yeah,
difficult.
good luck to you. Good luck to you.
Yes. I've done everything in my power. And now it's your turn. You know, and I get the good smacky, and they're checking my hands and checking my arm and checking my arm and checking, you know, um, just all the fun things. So that's kind of what I had to start learning. Like, okay, I can't just sit here passively and trust them to get it, because now they have to be warned. And that's my my biggest move of, you know, in medical world self advocacy.
Which is important to do, unfortunately. You have to.
It is, yes. And I think I've been really blessed in that. That's again the most that I've had to do, because everything else has gone well and gone where I'm comfortable.
Good.
You know, and you know, once answers did come, like things have been progressing better. You know, I haven't had to fight for myself too much, but I've had a couple of real confident lab techs that I have humbled very quickly.
But you know, in their defense, they do hear that a lot. But those of us who have really experienced it, because I know what you're saying. When I'm in remission, there's no problem drawing blood for me. But when my lupus is active, same thing. Good luck to you, man. Good luck to you getting a needle into a vein, because
Yep.
you're gonna have a good time.
I think I'm gonna have to start messing with them and telling them it's deliberate. You know, like, you know, I tucked him in there today. You're not gonna find anything.
That's a good one. I like that.
Because you know, with some of them, there's not a better way to tell them. And I think I want to touch back on that, because I don't know, I'm trying to like lead up to the spoiler to the my big reveal.
Okay, I'll let you get back.
It's all good. Oh, and also in this, my endocrinologist says, well, you know, you need to put on some weight. And so we were like, okay, got me the big jug of protein powder. And it says, okay, you know, you could do 1 or 2 scoops, you know, a milk and a banana. It's like, got it. 2 scoops every morning. Every morning. I didn't gain a single pound. And you know, and he tells me this, I'm like, cool, I'm gonna go back to eating whatever I want to eat. You know, whatever I can fit, I'm just gonna
And you
go
were
for it.
eating throughout the rest of the day too. You weren't just having that.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I would, you know, in school mornings I'd get up and I'd put it in the blender and I'd, you know, put it together, and then, you know, but I'm at least 3 meals a day girly. I'm a
Right.
slow eater, but I eat.
Mhm.
You know, I was having my lunch, I'd have my dinner, I'd have a little snack, maybe a little dessert, depending on the day. You know, so like things were progressing very normally. At one point, I was questioned about whether or not I was having patterns of disordered eating, and I said, I assure you I'm not.
Mhm.
I'll promise till I'm blue in the face, I am not doing anything like that to harm myself.
Mhm.
Because you know, that was big at the time, and you know, it was in all the little teen girl books, and I was like, no, I'm not doing that. I know. So you know, like I said, here we are. So now we're gonna go into 2013, and 2013 is a big year. I got to go to Paris in 2013, which was fantastic. You know, but we're still in freshman year, so um yeah, I've gotten that. So I think I got to mostly get all the way through my freshman year. Just kind of having things where they were, you know, little discoveries, little hiccups. And I think in June, my endocrinologist said, you know what? I'm not finding much. I'm going to send you to get an MRI. And I was like, interesting. Okay.
Mhm.
I am curious to see, you know, what this will hold. And I wasn't as knowledgeable as I am now. And, because if you don't go, you don't have a reason to learn what an MRI is.
That's right.
And if anyone in my life had had one, they hadn't told me about it. Just, go up to your niece and be like, hey, niece, I had an MRI today. Let me tell you about it. So I got to go do that. I did actually have a great aunt who was like, oh, I've had plenty of these. She's like, she kind of described it to me. It's loud. They'll kind of lay you down and slide you into this big tube machine, and then it'll be like a really bad marching band. It's like, okay.
I think you were the one who explained it to me when I had my first. Wasn't it you?
Most likely.
I think it was you who prepped me for my first MRI.
It was helpful that I got that from my great aunt. And so I'll share it whenever I can. I did eventually hear about somebody. So, they come to find out they're scanning my brain. I eventually, through this process, heard about somebody. She was like, oh, yeah, I had to get an MRI on my leg. And they handed me this book I could flip through of music. And then they put headphones on me. And I was listening to the music that I chose. I was like, you get to have music? Like, they barely talk to me while I'm in there. What do you get to have headphones? She's like, yeah. And she was, I was so jealous. I was so jealous of her specifically. Because I had to go in head first. And, one of my parents is quite claustrophobic. And my first MRI was one of their like mobile MRIs. So they had like in a trailer on the campus. And I was like, maybe this one's just loud because it's not permanent. Maybe this is just how loud this one is. And both my parents squeezed into that little trailer. And, my claustrophobic one was like, I would look over at you and there's like a little mirror up here. So you could like see my eyes. And she's like, I could see that your eyes were open, and it freaked me out. So it's like, oh, sorry for scaring you in my MRI. I don't know what to say. And that's some of my like my worst IV situations, because very often they won't put the IV in first. They'll just kind of slide me out, stick it in, and I have to have contrast with it, so they put me back in, and I'm like, I have to lay here, often taped down to the table. Anyway, since then I've had about 5,000 MRIs, so it's old hat. I can take a nap in an MRI now.
That's an accomplishment.
They one time were like, hey, this is a pretty big one. We need you to stay awake for this so it's clear. And I said, oh. Do you have headphones? Do you have music I can flip through? I'm tired today. I was ready to take this nap. It's so like climate controlled. They give you a little sheet. They prop my legs up so my knees can be bent and comfy. I'm like, good night. I'll see you guys in an hour. So I'm practically a professional, and it cracks me up every time. They're like, have you had an MRI before? I'm like, are we not on a first name basis at this point? How do we not know each other? It's just been so many. It's just been so many. Anyway, so I got to do my first one. Good fun. There was one day that I was at home. One of my parents had gone out, and then they both came back in through the door, and I was like, that's weird, because they are separated at this point. We're in different houses completely. I was like, that's interesting. Come to find out, they had a little, parental powwow. And there's a chance that I found out before when I remember finding out. But the story in my head is my endo ordered the MRI and then was like, okay, we're going to send you off to like neurology so they can tell you about the results of it. They're going to like interpret it and tell you what's going on. Well, he had called my parents first and told them what was going on. So for me, now we're all the way. It is Monday, July 22nd. And I sit down and meet who turns out to be my neurosurgeon, who is probably in his 30s and pretty good looking. I was not
You are
upset.
a teenager.
Yeah. It's like, oh, this isn't whatever's gonna happen. It's probably not so bad. This is like a, a Grey's Anatomy situation. Like, I was like, he's not that bad.
I don't blame you.
Yeah.
I don't know about what my son thinks of that, your husband, but I don't blame you.
We've talked about it. He's not even my doctor anymore. We're fine. Before him anyway. We're good. um and we got to meet him, and and at this point, like, we're traveling between three different medical facilities for different appointments and seeing different people, and I feel bad about all this driving that my parents are having to do. But Monday, July 22nd, he's like, so you have a brain tumor, and pulls up the scans. He's like, it's about 2 inches across. I was like, that's hefty. The brain's not so massive. That's a lot of space. Um, and essentially where it was situated, it was fairly central on the MRI scans that he was showing us, and that was my first time ever seeing an actual MRI result. So it was sitting right, sort of nestled in where the optic nerve kind of comes back, where the nerves meet, kind of sitting in there. It's sitting up against my pituitary gland. I learned he scared me a little bit because I had a seventh grade, like, rudimentary knowledge of anatomy. I hadn't learned a lot about the brain itself and the parts of the brain. So he's like, oh yeah, and your ventricles. And in seventh grade, ventricles are in the heart. So I was like, it's in my heart too? Oh no, there are ventricles in the brain.
Okay, see, I didn't even know that.
Learned it that day after a bit of a scary moment. Because that was a lot more concerning. I don't want to double up on it, So there are ventricles in the brain that hold the spinal fluid. So there are two of them. I mean, I do this because mine were big.
Mm-hmm.
So my tumor was not letting them drain. They're supposed to, like, drain and go down and become spinal fluid. And instead they were quite enlarged.
Wow. That
Yes.
explains a lot.
There's a lot of explanation there. There were some tests that were done afterwards that should have been done before things happened, especially relating to my eyes. They started asking me, like, well, didn't you do this, before? I said, no. Things happened very quickly, very suddenly, I'm gonna get there. But my eyes are affected because, it's sitting right in the optic nerve. My pituitary gland was really key to this. And I'll get back to that as well. So here we are on Monday. And he says, okay, so this is the deal. You've got this tumor. It's pretty big. So we're either going to do surgery on you tomorrow or Thursday. I was like, do I get to choose? I'm choosing Thursday, please. I'd like a minute to process this, please. Because that was all a lot. I mean, but I think the biggest emotion I felt in that moment was, like, vindication, I think.
Because you knew really the whole time.
I knew without knowing.
Mm-hmm.
So it was sort of that, like, whoa, like, I had it right. And I think I told everybody in that moment, I was like, I have never said this out loud, but I have had the theory for, at that point, we're going on 6 years. Like, I've had this theory for probably close to, 5 years that this is a tumor.
Right.
With no other information. And that's wacky to me. So I'm just really happy that I was right. I'm really happy that now there's an answer.
Mm-hmm.
There's an answer for a lot of this. And and at the same time, I'm like, okay, also, I know, I'm old enough to know that my parents are now incredibly worried.
Yep.
and they're, they're very much checking up on me in that moment, and continuously through the day. And I'm like, no, I'm as okay as I can be, I think.
And knowing them, what I know of them, they were probably kicking themselves for not pushing for more. And
I mean, I know, and as we've talked about it later, I know they did as much as they could, and I obviously, I put no fault. I don't put any fault on them. I don't put any fault on my doctors, on any of my medical team. I mean, my symptoms didn't fit. This was like the Hail Mary pass of my endocrinologist. And then he was right, which is
well,
why.
and we're taught to just trust what the doctors say and just go with it. And because you're right, they're all just doing the best that they can.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, never did we encounter anybody who we felt was incompetent, or that we were feeling like there was just, I don't know, they weren't good at what they were doing, or that we couldn't trust. My pediatrician, she's been mine and my brother's doctor, like, forever and ever. My endocrinologist, he was great. My neurosurgeon was, I mean, he explained things really well, and he just came across as so intelligent and capable that, we were like, I mean, yeah, whatever you're saying, yes, absolutely, I believe it.
So hi, if you listen to Jessy's story of how she was diagnosed, what she all went through on her diagnosis, then I'm sure your heart really went out to her, the child that she was, as she went through all those struggles. And in tomorrow's episode with Jessy Serrano, she's going to continue her story, where she's going to talk about her treatments, what she went through with her treatments. And she's going to talk about trying to be a normal teenager, and how she was, in fact, a normal teenager as she was going through all of that, and how it set her up for the rest of her life. So looking forward to seeing you all tomorrow. And remember, if you or someone you know would be a wonderful guest on this podcast of how to find joy in the midst of chaos or after chaos, make sure you contact me at humorinchaos@gmail.com. I'm Sarah Howard Nelson, and thank you for joining us.